Hello everybody, today I'd like to read to you a chapter of A Little History of Economics. Chapter 17, Flashing Your Cash. On a small farm in Wisconsin, a boy was raised who became one of the most unconventional economic thinkers America ever had produced. The closest it had to Karl Marx. Unlike Marx, Lowenstein Veblen 1857 to 1929, didn't attract bands of revolutionaries. But, like Marx, he was an outsider, a critical observer of the fast-changing society that he found himself living in, but wasn't entirely part of. Marx, a German of Jewish descent, observed from Victorian London the progress of the Industrial Revolution. His writings were flaming rocks hurled at the mansions of the rich. Veblen came from a small community of Norwegian farmers and was removed from what he saw as the gaudy American culture around him. In his work, he made fun of the vanity of America's rich and powerful people. Veblen grew up during America's industrialization, which took off after the end of the Civil War in 1865. New railways crisscrossed the vast plains and factories spewed out steel, lumber, and boots. America's economy was fueled by abundant coal, oil, and land, by a huge consumer market, and by the labor of millions of immigrants who streamed off in the boat to find their fortunes. By the late 19th century, America's economy had seized leadership from Britain's. Americans were at first a nation of newcomers with small farms and businesses, quite different from the old societies of Europe, which were divided into aristocrats, rich industrialists, and the mass of the poor. As American industries flourished, though, small companies grew into giant ones. So did the fortunes of their owners. The fortunes brought high living for a few, far beyond the reach of the ordinary American. The writer Mark Twain called it the Gilded Age. The new wealth had a golden sheen, but it was only surface deep, and underneath it was a society that was wasteful and immoral. Veblen looked at American society with a quizzical eye. From a young age, he'd made a point of breaking convention and unsettling people. As a boy, he once shot his neighbor's dog during an argument, and it scrawled insults on the neighbor's fence in Greek. At college, he shocked the respectable teachers by delivering an address entitled A Plea for Cannibalism. After earning his PhD from Yale University, he returned to his parents' farm, where he spent years drudging manual work instead of reading in many languages, covering everything from biology to ancient myths. This wide learning fed the unconventional writings that started to float in his early middle age. He worked in a series of makeshift homes, one of which was the basement of a friend's house, which he entered through a window. There, at night, he wrote his books in violet ink with a homemade pen. Conventional economic theory had little to say about the rise of America's new class of rich. After all, the economy was full of rational economic men, sensible people who accurately weigh the cost and benefit of any economic decision and then acted accordingly. Rational people always maximize their utility or well-being, and if it meant using their wealth to buy gold watches and marble statues, then so be it. In his most famous book, The Theory of the Leisure Class, Veblen argued against the against the conventional thinking about economic behavior. Rational economic people go around weighing up their various desires for things and then buying what they like. But where do their desires come from? They come from person's history and culture, areas that most theories of economics don't deal with. In Veblen's view, people don't make decisions about what to buy and how to spend their time through rational calculation. To really understand people's choices, you have to look to their instincts and habits, things shaped by the societies they grew up in. On the face of it, capitalism looks as if it has nothing at all in common with ancient societies of tribes people, where they rained on to sacrifices of animals to the gods and gifts of shells to neighboring villages. Rational people in capitalist societies are engaged in buying, selling, and making profits. But, in fact, says Veblen, if you look closely enough, you'll see primitive customs living on the modern economy. We buy things not so much to satisfy our own desires, as a completely rational person would, but in order to be approved of by others. Think about the last time that think about the last t-shirt that you bought. Even if you bought it because you liked it, didn't you also think about whether your friends would like it? Would you have chosen one that you liked but you knew they'd laugh at? In earlier societies, people had gained approval by others by being powerful enough to not have to work. At some point in history, a surplus of goods were produced as people got better at growing food and making things. The surplus allowed priests, kings, and warriors to survive without doing anything. Their precious things, silver goblets, elaborate hairdressers, jewel-encrusted swords, and brought them honor. Ordinary work came to be seen as demeaning. Certainly Polynesian chiefs, Veblen tells us, were so used to having servants carry out every task for them that they preferred to starve than to be seen transferring food from their plates to their mouths. Veblen saw the same instinct in the contemporary American economy. The new rich lived off the interest of many shares and inherited fortunes without having to do much. Like the Polynesian chiefs, they gained social recognition by demonstrating through leisure activities and buying luxuries that they didn't have to work. Veblen called their purchase of mansions and fur coats and their trips to the French Riviera conspicuous consumption. It was buying things to show off with. He named the privileged few the leisure class. Men of the leisure class wore tailcoats and silk cravats to emphasize the absence of any productive work such as digging a field or driving a bus. The clothing then came to be judged as being more beautiful than a farmer's simple linen shirt. But to Veblen, there was no reason why the shine of a rich man's patent leather shoes was really any more beautiful than the shine on the worn sleeve of a poor man's jacket. Women's clothes needed to be particularly impractical to show that they never had to scrub a potato or polish a window. The substantial reason for our tenacious attachment to the skirt is just that it is expensive and it hampers the wearer at every turn and incapacitates her for all useful exertion. The wives of rich men were there to show off their husband's wealth. At an extreme, the desire to impress means that when a price of a silk dress rises, the demand for it goes up rather than down. At a high price, because few people can afford it, the dress becomes an even better way of showing off your status, and so more wealthy people want to buy one. Veblen said that conspicuous consumption filtered down to the lower classes who wanted to be like the rich. Middle-class people buy spoons with the handles of ivory, which don't look the usefulness of the spoon, but make the users look respectable to the friends. Even the poorest people might go without food before the last vase or necklace is sold out. Conspicuous consumption is a waste, said Veblen. It diverts economic energy from the production of what people really need into what they can show off with. The result is a treadmill of dissatisfaction. People copy the rich by consuming more, and the rich buy even more expensive things to keep themselves ahead, and everyone has to run harder to keep up. Veblen certainly seemed to live out his criticism in his own rather modest consumption. His clothes were too big and often looked as if he'd slept in them, and he kept his watch crudely attached to his vest with a safety pin. He suggested doing away with silks and tweeds altogether and making clothes out of paper instead. Modern Americans try with chiefswomen like Cornelius Vanderbilt, who over the 19th century rose from being an uneducated ferry boy to a fabulously wealthy real owner, leaving an estate worth billions in today's money. The Vanderbilt family built giant mansions and summer estates. One of them gave his wife for her birthday, the Marble House in Rhode Island, a lavish palace made from 500,000 cubic feet of white marble. Underneath the conspicuous consumption of men like Vanderbilt was an instinct that Veblen called predators. Where barbarian kings attacked each other with spears, the modern leisure class defeated their rivals with financial trickery. Take the battle between Cornelius Vanderbilt and another businessman, Daniel Drew, for example, for control of the railway line that ran between Chicago and New York City. Drew cooked up a scheme to outwit Vanderbilt by influencing the price of the railway company's shares. To pull it off, he needed the price to go sky high. He visited a New York bar frequented by stockbrokers, and while touching away to some of them, he pulled out a handkerchief to wipe his brow. A slip of paper fell out onto the floor, but he pretended not to notice. After he left, the broker snatched up the scrap. It contained a tip, information designed to make him believe that the price of the shares was about to go up. The brokers rushed out to buy the shares in the hope of making a profit after the price went up. The rush did just that, and the share price rocketed. Drew's truck was just like just like a winning move in a game. Actually, Veblen trusted the popularity of sports among the rich to the same predatory instinct. One drew control of the railway. Vanderbilt, Screw, and others like them helped build the new American economy. But theirs was cutthroat capitalism. They'd cheat and scheme if it made money. For their ruthlessness, they became known as the robber barons. What do I care about the law? Ain't I get the power, Veblen said. The predatory instinct had little to do with real human needs, said Veblen. There was another instinct, however, that of workmanship. The needs of the whole community, repairing of the railway line and making sure that the trains run on time, for example. Veblen didn't call for a revolution as Marx did. He thought that that the waste caused by conspicuous consumption would be done away with when society was ruled by the instinct of workmanship rather than barbarian society. It would mean an end to the merry-go-round of more and more shopping just to keep up with the neighbours. The technicians who invented and improved machines. A better society would be one in which they helped guide the economy towards the satisfaction of real human needs. Although his unconventional economics never really caught on, the eccentric Norwegian was given some recognition by his colleagues when in 1925, at the age of nearly 70, he was offered the presidency of the American Economic Association. Veblen refused and retreated to a hilltop cabin surrounded by weeks outside Palo Alto in California. There he lived in a simple room with the furniture that he made for himself. In October 1929, far away from the skyscrapers of New York City, the stock market crashed and gales of economic depression blew the glitter of America's economic carousel. Veblen didn't quite live to see it, dying a few months before the storm hit, living to the last as the hermit that he really was, among the rats and skunks that kept him company in his hut.